That was fun. This is not quite so enthusiastic. So, we got one straggler here. Luke's temptation passage, like so many, is riddled with meaning. What I want to focus on, though, is not the more conventional temptation aspect, but rather the evidence that Jesus cites in his argument with the devil. So Jesus is tempted 3 times, and on the first time, the devil says to him, "If you are the Son of God, command this stone to become a loaf of bread," which, in my opinion, sounds fairly tempting, because if I've been wandering around in the desert for 40 days, I'd probably be pretty hungry. But to this, Jesus just responds, "It is written, one does not live by bread alone." And talk about willpower, right? Anyway, so what exactly does Jesus mean when he says, "It is written"? After some searching and some help filling in the details with the trusty Bible Spark Notes, I found that Jesus is quoting Deuteronomy chapter 8. All right, don't forget this, we're going to get back to it. So, Jesus' next temptation and response are, "To you I will give their glory and all this authority, for it has been given over me, and I give it to anyone I please. If you then will worship me, it will all be yours." And Jesus is not fazed. He says, "It is written, worship the Lord your God and serve only him." There it is again. It's the "it is written" bit. So again, I did some digging and found that this was also a reference to Deuteronomy chapter 8. And at this point, I kind of caught on to the pattern and wasn't surprised when it shows up again in the final temptation, which is, "If you are the Son of God, throw yourself down from the pinnacle of the temple, for it is written, he will command his angels concerning you to protect you, and on their hands they will bear you up so that you will not dash your foot against a stone." So here the devil's sort of caught on, because he joins in the "who can quote the Bible better" game. But the devil loses because Jesus answers saying, "Do not put the Lord your God to the test." And at this point, the devil leaves. He's like, "I'm not going to win today." And Jesus' response, surprise, surprise, appears in Deuteronomy chapter 8. So at this point, I'm very suspicious of Deuteronomy chapter 8. What exactly is it about this one specific passage that holds so much meaning for Jesus right after he's come out of the desert? And I found that this chapter was entitled, "A Warning Not to Forget God in Prosperity." And it's essentially a list of instructions given by God to the Israelites who have just come from wandering the desert for 40 years on how not to get kicked out to wander the desert again for this period of time. And this sort of occurs because they have a lack of faith in God, and there's been some disobedience, and God is unhappy, and the climax of this conflict is that the Israelites do not believe they're able to take the homeland from the current inhabitants of the people that live there, even though God has told them that they can. And so they then have no home and are forced to wander the desert for this amount of time.
Come on.
And they finally get out, and God is like, "Hey, that wasn't so great, so we're going to follow these commandments so that you don't have to do that again." So here we are. It's the beginning of Lent, and this passage is all about remembering to have faith in God and God's commandments.
Amen.
Now, as Presbyterians, we don't give things up the way Catholics do as a way of fighting temptation and as this sort of symbolic reminder to have faith in God. But it doesn't mean this isn't a very important time of reflection and faith. Faith and reflection can be really hard. Personally, my life is super chaotic. Even as a second semester senior, it doesn't calm down. And the reality is there aren't ever necessarily going to be calm moments in life. I find myself committing to more than I have time for because life is short and there's so much I want to do, and there are so many really awesome opportunities. But the point is, time isn't exactly something I have a lot of right now or ever really see myself having. So how exactly am I supposed to take time out of the next 40 days, let alone the rest of my life, to have faith in God and return to a committed relationship with my faith. For me personally, I find that I can be spiritual in things that I already do. That way I don't have to take out this extra time, and it doesn't have to be another stressful element in my life. Music is a really important part of my life, and always will be going forward. I find there to be something inherently spiritual in music. When I play or listen to music, I feel myself relaxing, like all the stress of this life just releases its hold, and I can let the music envelop me. This is the kind of place that reminds me of my faith and my spirituality. And there have been certain moments in my musical life that, as with everything, have struck me particularly strongly. One Tuesday night in my clarinet lesson, playing a duet with my teacher, we locked into a kind of ethereal plane where nothing existed but the music, and everything else slipped away to this kind of overpowering peacefulness. I find myself suddenly understanding a kind of spirituality in that moment, this unearthly connection with beauty. And I remember crying, and there was nothing to be said. My teacher hugged me, and she understood, and I knew she understood, because that moment in music where you just connect is so beautiful and so peaceful. In practicing a duet with Andrew that we were to play for Jack Hans's, to us, Mr. Hans's memorial concert, I again found myself lifted to a spiritual place. It had been a really hard few weeks, struggling to understand the loss of someone so important in our lives, trying to think of the future of a group that meant so much to us, grieving. And the Mozart duet we were playing was upbeat and cheerful, and I was reminded of all the wonderful things Mr. Hans had done for me, and taught me, and shared with me. And I was able to find a little bit of peace in the upheaval as my life, as I knew it, and as I had foreseen it to be. And sometimes the moments of finding that peaceful spirituality in music are more personal, more solitary. Sometimes it's about taking 20 minutes to listen to Rachmaninoff's Second Piano Concerto or the Goldberg Variations, and just let everything else slip away. It can sit on the back burner, and you just focus on the calm piano music. It gives you time to emotionally recuperate from the day and to return to a meditative state, to find an inner tranquility and be at peace. To me, this peace that I've just mentioned in these three examples is a sort of spirituality, and through music, I am able to make time for it in my life. Amen. These powerful moments are certainly not everyday occasions, but I do my best to take even 10 minutes every other day to listen to the piano music, to make music, and to return to that core tranquility. For me, Mary Oliver's poem, Wild Geese, speaks to this kind of peaceful belonging and spirituality in the world. She says, "You do not have to be good. You do not have to walk on your knees for 100 miles through the desert repenting. You only have to let the soft animal of your body love what it loves. Tell me about despair, yours, and I will tell you mine. Meanwhile, the world goes on. Meanwhile, the sun and the clear pebbles of the rain are moving across the landscapes, over the prairies and the deep trees, the mountains and the rivers. Meanwhile, the wild geese, high in the clean blue air, are heading home again. Whoever you are, no matter how lonely, the world offers itself to your imagination, calls to you like the wild geese, harsh and exciting, over and over, announcing your place in the family of things."
Amen. Amen.